Welcome back, David. Thank you very much for taking the time also right now to address a, let's say, current events issue. Some people already have been asking what your thoughts and insights are, so we're very excited that you will share some of that with us today.
Okay, now the thing is, the first thing, let's have a look at what's going on around the world. This is not a joke. Yes? Yes, what do you see?
We have, well, yeah, supposedly pro, okay, this isn't, okay, now first you have pro-Israel protesters. All right.
Yes.
All right.
What are people doing? They're on the streets. Yes. And they're holding Israeli flags. Yes. And they're shouting, I stand with Israel, I stand with Israel, I stand with Israel. Ah, down with the Arabs, down with the Palestinians, terrorists, terrorists, blah, blah, blah. People are shouting their heads off. And on the other side of the road, let's have a look at what we see on the other side of the road in many of these so-called protests, yes, that are happening outside Israel, in Europe and America and around the world. What do you see on the other side of the road?
Of course, pro-Palestinian protests.
Free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine. Just people are shouting their heads off. They're looking at in an aggressive way to the opposite side. Yes, and the conflict, everybody knows one day could spread into Europe and America. And many of these people, they really want to attack the opposite side. Many of these people live in Europe and America, and they have no clue what is actually going on in the Middle East. I just spoke with somebody who's English, yes, and from a university in Birmingham, and I asked them, why are you asking me questions? They were asking questions like, what's really going on, David? Blah, blah, blah. In university, there was big meetings today, you know, like pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, this and that. And what do you call it, evangelicals coming saying, hey, this is the sign of the end of the world. Armageddon, Christ will return and he shall redeem thee. And people are going crazy. On the other side, there is the Muslim priest who is coming, who is saying, this is now the time of the Dajjal or the Antichrist. He's coming. Yes. And all this. And the thing is, both sides, yes, both sides had leaders, mainly what you call it, Christians and Jews, yes, from the Christian community, not Jews, and from the Muslim community, and they're coming and they're telling all these stories. Yes. So the thing is, what you call it, the end of times and everything, and people are getting emotional, and the thing is, what do you call it? Yes. The thing is, I'll give you an example. What's in these books? Like, for example, it says that in the Christian book, in the Muslim books, let's start with this. Yes, I don't even want to say it because these things are there and it's not very nice, but it says that when the Antichrist will come and he will, the Jews are going to join the Antichrist, and what do you call it, the Muslims are going to basically destroy them. Yes, and on the other side, when Christ returns.
Oh, but just to be clear, this refers to Hadith.
Yes, but let's keep it basic. Um, what we call it, yes. It's because it's controversial, so I don't want to mention it. So the thing is, on the other side, we got these Christian things that turn around and say that, what do you call it, the Jews rejected Christ. The Jews are the Christ killers, and they killed Christ, etc. And the time is coming when Christ will return and deal with this. Yes, so many people call this Armageddon. Armageddon. Now, let me just ask something. Yes, here. Yes. Why are people so like interested or like looking forward to this when people are going to be like killing each other? You know, humanity will be killing each other. Isn't this what Armageddon is supposed to be? Where humans are going to kill humans, the Christians and the Muslims are going to say, hey, this is the Christ killers and they are the Antichrist or something, and things like this, and they've not even had a look at the history. Yes. So what is this? What is this? And people are shouting their heads off, screaming their heads off. Now, the next question I asked is, saying, do you or any of these people? The person I spoke to isn't on any side. Yes, it's just a girl, and she's explaining what's going on in the university. This is an education institution. Yes, where they're letting people having these meetings and these discussions, and priests from all sides, from Christianity and Islam, who are coming. Yes, I mean, who the hell in the world wants an Armageddon? Whoa, what is this? Yes, where people are just going to be killing each other or chopping heads, saying Christ killers or whatever. Yes, isn't what do you call it, Christianity based on Jesus? And they say Jesus spoke Hebrew, even though there is no evidence of this. And the religion is called Shalom, or in the Arabic word it's called Salam or Islam. They're both the same religion, and they're both supposed to mean peace. What sort of peace is this? You see? Then, the next question I asked is, I said, okay, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has just been over 100 years. And then I turned around and said, I asked the question, do you know who is Moshe Dayan? Yes. And the answer was no. So then I turned around and thought, how could they not know Moshe Dayan? And they're asking me about the Israeli-Arab conflict. Here is a picture of Moshe Dayan. Yes, and many Jews turn around and say he was a genius. He was a genius and a hero. The word genius comes from the Arabic word jinn, by the way. Yes, he was a genius and a hero for Israel. Now, for the Arabs, they have a man called Jamal Abdul Nasser, but I will use the Egyptian pronunciation because he was Egyptian. And the Arab hero, what do you call it? Yes, what do you call it? Gamal Abdul Nasser. He was Egyptian. And let me send you his pictures. And I turned around and said, do you know Gamal Abdel Nasser? And the answer was no. So then I turned around and thought, how can you even discuss, yes, or even understand what is going on in the Middle East without knowing these two people? Then I said, do you know who is David Ben Gurion? Yes. This is a picture of Gamal Abdel Nasser. Yes. And they didn't know. Then I said, do you know who is David Ben Gurion? And the answer was no once again. And I thought, how can you not know David Ben Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel in 1948, and you want to ask me questions and discuss the conflict? Yes? So let me send you a picture of David Ben Gurion. Yes? So the thing is, they don't even know who these people are. So how can you discuss this? It seems like saying, I want to discuss the United States, but I don't know who is George Washington, and I don't know who is George Bush. I don't know the difference. George is George. Yes? So they didn't know. Then I turned around and said, do you know who is Abdullah Tal? Yes? And what do you call it? Yes? They didn't know who Abdullah Tal was. Yes? What do you call it? Yes. So how can they discuss, yes, what is going on in the Middle East without even knowing who this person was? Yes. So the thing is, it's just ridiculous. Yes. Let me send a picture of Abdullah Tal. Then you will know who he is. He was he was one of one of the public, advertised by the media and historians, the public leader who fought in Palestine or Israel in 1948. Yes, and who the forces that he was with conquered Jerusalem. So the thing is, people don't know who these people are. Yes, and so how can they discuss this so-called conflict of what's going on if they don't know who these people are. You see? Now let me send you a picture, and then this picture, you will notice how strange it is that people are turning around and saying, at that time, Moshe Dayan was the leader of the Israeli armed forces outside Jerusalem, and Abdullah Tal was the Arab hero, yes, who conquered Jerusalem in 1948. He invaded on the 18th at night, and on the 19th, the battle started for Jerusalem on the 19th of May. 1948. And here you see a picture. It's very strange that you can even see Abdullah Tal, At-Tal, many people will say, or El-Tal, yes, meeting Moshe Dayan. Yes, and the thing is, the way these men are smiling for the photographs and everything, after massacres and rapes and kidnappings and murders, isn't it a bit strange? That's what
Well,
we've been told. So
mm-hmm,
now,
mm-hmm.
yes, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, unfortunately, not to me anymore, but yeah, I have an idea where you're
Yeah,
going. Please continue.
yeah. I'm saying how ridiculous and stupid these people are, standing there on the streets. What do you call it? I stand with Israel. I stand free, free Palestine, free, and all these things. And then they're talking about anything, and many of them don't know even the basic history. Yes. So if they don't know the basic history, it just shows how ridiculous they are. Yes. So the thing is, it's just totally ridiculous. It's just a joke. Yes, but then when we see the reality in Israel, which many people don't talk about, I'm not going to talk about the Orthodox Jews, because many people know that a large percentage of the Orthodox Jews do not support Israel at all. Yes, yes, don't support Israel at all. I'm sending you a screenshot from my new book about the Middle East conflict, which should be out in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Here we can see, what do you call it? Yes, thousands of Israelis. What do you call it, with the Palestinian flag and the Israeli flag? This is just ordinary civilians in the streets. These protests happen all the time. Not Orthodox Israelis, just common, normal, everyday people who go to work, who know that a lot of it is a scam, and they've had enough. Enough is enough. This 100-year conflict. So now the thing is, yes, everybody's saying there's got to be a different way. Now, the thing is, not many people have offered a different way or a solution. They're all screaming out and saying, yeah, it's a conspiracy. Yeah, it's an inside job. Yes, everything is being organized by the people in power. Where is the proof? Okay, people are saying all these things. So now along come people like David Ewing Jr. and other people, yes, who've come along, and they've presented evidence that is such serious evidence, but many people are ignoring it. The thing is, if people actually did their own research, they don't have to look at my research, because everything I show they can find online. These pictures of Moshe Dayan, these pictures of Abdullah Tal, you can find them. So now these people that we see photographs of, military generals, politicians, or geniuses, the word genius came from the word jinn. Yes, what do you call it? Yes, because this conflict involves Arabs and Jews. The Arabs, there's hundreds of millions of them. Yes, and the Jews, there's not many of them. Yes, did I? I'll tell you now. Now let me say something about Islam and the Muslims. Yes, and what do you call it? Yes, um, yes. Now the Quran actually says something, and says, what do you call it? Yes, that God created men and the jinns. Yes, to worship God. Yes, and then what do you call it? In Islam, it says, what do you call it? There is a question where Allah or God says, "Did I not tell you not to worship the jinns?" This is a serious thing. Yes. So this is a serious thing. What is all this hero worship on both sides? Yes, on both sides. What do you call it? That
Mm-hmm.
people are what do you call it? Worshipping these geniuses and these heroes, worshipping these flags, standing with the Israeli flag or standing with
Well,
the Palestinian flag.
and this is something we may have to get into deeper at some point, the philosophical idea about who, what, and where is God or is not. But in a general idea, I would say it's the common trope of making only certain men to be like gods, and then use that as a justification for all kinds of things that the God most people imagine would certainly not approve of, I guess.
Yes, that's a very deeper question, philosophy. Yes, those things I don't go into because I try, in this topic especially, I will not bring it up. Yes, maybe at a later date because the thing is, you
The
know,
basic correlation I just want to bring up is this idea, as you mentioned in previous talks, about humanism and then
yes.
certain, or about the idea of Jesus Christ being the quote unquote only begotten Son. So, always this idea of creating some kind of superiority complex, I
Yes.
almost want to say, and hero worship, and then
Okay.
use that against the general
What you've
population.
mentioned is an intellectual thing. Now, the average evangelicalism is very big in Northern Europe, Western Europe, and the United States, and in Australia, Singapore, and in many other places. Yes, evangelical Christianity, but what you've just said, half these people don't even know these things. They're just brainwashed to sing and dance and just believe Armageddon is coming. The preachers are sat there giving their speeches saying, can't you see? This is a sign of the end of times. The Syrians are doing this, that, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's not waste time. Yes. And then we will see, what do you call it? Yes. Is there only one side or is there really two sides? And are humanity being played with? Yes. Okay, now let's start with the beginning of the conflict. This is in my new book. Yes, according to most historians, in the 20th century, in the old city of Jerusalem, they called it the Jewish Quarter. In the year 1900, at the beginning of the century, there was 19,000 Jewish people living in the Jewish Quarter in the old city. Yes,
Really,
there was
oh, it really says 19,000 in the Wikipedia. All right.
yeah, yes. So now the thing is, let's go a bit further. So around in 1911, what do you call it? This city, Jerusalem, in the Middle East, was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire is not what people think it is. They'll have to watch previous videos, read my books. But anyway, at that time, they're going to say a British adventurer. No, he was a military man. Yes, called Captain Parker. Yes, he went and he was trying to do excavations under what is known as Temple Mount or Al-Aqsa Cathedral Mosque. And what do you call it? Yes. What do you call it? He was discovered on April the 19th, 1911. And what do you call it? Yes, riots took place. Um, and what do you call it? Yes, it became a serious issue at the time. So now the thing is, what's famous about the Temple Mount is something known in English as the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall. Now, the Western Wall was built in 19 BC by King Herod. Let's go to the next thing. Now, the Western Wall is estimated to be around 19 meters high. Yes, yes, 19 meters high. So let's go further. What do you call it? Yes, the British threw the Ottoman Empire out of Palestine during World War One. Now, the Ottoman Empire in Palestine and their military forces, I'll go through it in the future. Yes, the officers were German. Yes, and what do you call it? What many people don't mention is that it was a German army with Turkish soldiers, Russian soldiers, soldiers from the Balkans, Bulgaria, even Serbia, Turkey, and Arabs as well. Yes, it was an international army. It was a world war. And the British, what do you call it, defeated the Ottomans at the Battle of Megiddo. Yes, they named it Megiddo to give it a biblical name, and the battle was on the 19th of September 1918. So now what many people tell us is that the British and the French already planned with the Vatican and other powers, Yes, they already planned to divide the Middle East, known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Yes, and the agreement, yes, many people don't know, is that this was made in 1916, yes, and was ratified by the British and the French military governments, yes, on the 9th and 16th of May, and it came into effect on the 19th of May. Yes, the Time magazine even shows every year, History Channel, you can see it. It's May the 19th, they will say. Even if it's not, they're going to say it. Yes, that's the anniversary date. So now the British have taken over, what do you call it, Palestine. So what do you call it, there's riots against the British, and Jewish immigration is coming from Europe. Yes, a lot of the immigration was planned, and it had something to do with the Ottoman Empire and demographic engineering, throw the people out of Europe who believe in God. Yes, uh, uh, um, especially the Muslims, and throw people out who are like a darker skin color and things like this. So what happened in 1920? They called it the Prophet Moses riots or Nebi Musa riots, and at that time there was the British claimed there was a military leader on behalf of the Jews known as Jabotinsky. Now, what do you call it? And he had an organization called the Haganah military organization, and the British arrested 19 members. Yes, it was a very big story. It's a very big story in the history of Israel and Palestine. So then the British army is there, but it's not exactly British. I will explain this in a minute. So what happens is, for the British to actually take control of Palestine, the British and the French and the other powers had a conference known as the San Remo Conference. And this conference was on the 19th of April, 1920. Yes, and during that conference, the British were officially given by the people in power, other military men, turned around and said, hey, you have got the mandate. We're giving you the authority to rule Palestine. But the San Remo conference and many of their resolutions collapsed. Yes, disagreements between themselves, the military leaders, who makes how much money, blah, blah, blah. And this collapsed on the 19th of October, 1922. Let me just show something, because many people don't really understand this. Yes, what do you call it? Yes, the British invaded the Middle East. Yes, and they invaded the Middle East in World War One. Yes. Now, when many people say that the British invaded, they don't realize it wasn't actually England. Yes. What do you call it? Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an example of who really invaded the Middle East, and you are going to think, what the hell? Yes. And this is a very big shock. Here is the British army in Baghdad. They call it British. But the thing is, we turn around and see Indian soldiers here. Yes, they've come and they're all Indians. So the British invaded Palestine. Who are these British? Who are they really? Yes, this is a serious question. Many people don't think of. Yes, this is very important. I will go into this again a bit later. Who they are. Yes. So then, at that time, what do you call it? Yes, more and more people who they called Jewish, or they were European people who went to live in the Middle East, because in Europe there was racist ideologies that were spreading that he doesn't have blonde hair or blue eyes, throw them out. So many of them went to Palestine, many of them went to Bosnia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey. They went south. So then these people, they had elections for they say the Jewish community on the 19th of April, 1920. Of course, it was authorized by the British, whoever the British were. Yes. So now, the thing is, at that time they created something like the United Nations, the original, and it was called the League of Nations. So now the League of Nations had a conference in London. Yeah, because it's these people anyway, the British and the French. It's not really something to do with the nations. It was them again. Yes, they had a conference in London. Yes, and on the 19th of July 1922, and this is when they included the Balfour Declaration into the mandate for Palestine. Yes, yes, you see. So
Mhm.
now the main thing is many of these people they're going to talk about the Balfour Declaration. Who said any of this history is true? What if they invented the history of Zionism and they're lying just to make friends amongst the Jewish community and just to create hatred in the Muslim community and things like this? What if all of it's a lie? So let's have a look at this Balfour Declaration. Yes, the British colonial military government asked the Zionist leaders to create the Balfour Declaration on the 19th of June. Why doesn't anyone check this? Yes. Oh, they told them to create it
Uh-oh.
on the 19th. Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that's of course a huge red flag. This is one thing because, people that go deeper into this, they know to differentiate, as always, between the government and the people and between religious leaders and the actual
But now,
core
but now
ideas.
we all
But this
have.
is another level if maybe even this history
Yes, and now that you've mentioned
is
this,
forged.
there is no excuse for this. It's not just another level. I'm Mr. Nobody. I'm Mr. Nobody. I don't want followers. I don't want to follow anybody. Yes. And the thing is, you know what? If I can find this information, everybody else can. It's online. But the thing is, people are lazy. They just want to believe what they want to. They're not going to go out there and search that. If they don't, then the price people are going to have to pay is that these people in power, the geniuses or the jinns, they're going to stay in power and they're just going to cause bloodshed and hatred and
Yeah.
racism. It's going
Yes.
to continue. So now let's not move away from the Balfour Declaration. The British military government, it is not a civilian government. Yeah, a bunch of soldiers, gangsters who want money, who want to rule the world, attack people, kill people. A military kills people. It's a killing machine. Yes, told Zionist leaders to create the Balfour Declaration on the 19th of June. Who said any of this is true? Who said these Zionist leaders existed anyway? So now let's see what happened. Yes, um, the Balfour Declaration, what they tell us, was calling for the homeland for a Jewish people in Palestine. It was publicly announced on the 2nd of November. Yes, what do you call it? This was exactly 19 weeks after that the British told create the Balfour Declaration, and then 19 weeks later they announce it. Oh, so when you see this, you can turn around and think, hey, all of these are by the same side. So now, what do you call it? The British have occupied Palestine, yes, or what we call Israel today. Now, in Jerusalem, the Muslims of Jerusalem, the Arabs, they've always turned around and said, this place is not Jerusalem, it's Quds. It has no history of a temple that has ever been there. No temple has ever existed there. Nothing. It's just a lie. This is what they've clearly said again and again and again. Now, what do you call it? At that time, the British, they're going to say the governor of Jerusalem. No, the British Army governor of Jerusalem. Allegedly, they're going to say this is true history. Received a letter from the Muslim Council on the 19th of February saying, hey, we're having problems at the Western Wall. We don't want, what do you call it? Yes, the Jewish peoples come here, put chairs and benches, things like this. They're claiming they received this letter. So then, what do you call it? A lot of violence begins and happens over the years between Jews and Arabs because more and more people are coming from Europe. Yes, same like we see right now. There's hundreds and hundreds of boats coming from Africa to Europe. Yes, that many people say it's illegal immigration. They didn't get a visa. So what do you call it? Violence was happening, and then what do you call it? Just after Yom Kippur on the 19th of October, 1928. This is what historians say. They claim that what do you call it? Yes, and the Arabs were on guard. They started attacking Jews. Yes, this is what they say. Then they tell us, oh, of course, the British, yeah, and the French, and they cared so much what's going on. They wanted to stop the violence. They started an investigation. So on the 19th of November, 1928, the British government made a white paper to address this Yom Kippur incident. Yes, and they declared their policy. Yes, And their policy that they announced on the 19th of November is that the Western Wall at the bottom of where the mosque is, Al-Aqsa Cathedral Mosque, and they declared it was the property of the Muslims and had nothing to do with European colonial ambitions. This is what they said, but it had everything to do with it. Yes. So at that time, yes, the Rockefellers, everybody else, all these investors, yes, wanted to show that this place was Jerusalem. They opened a museum, and the cornerstone for the museum was placed with the big ceremony on the 19th of June, 1930, in Jerusalem, by the British military government. Yes, and then they mysteriously found all these historical things to show that Christians have been going here for centuries, on their pilgrimages, and Jewish people have been coming here for centuries, and this is the actual Jerusalem of the Bible. Yes. So what do you call it? Yes. So the problems still continued, but the 1929 riots was such a big thing. I think it was 1928, 29, around that time. There was many riots that happened. So then the British, what do you call it, sent a commission to investigate what's going on because they really wanted peace so much. They cared about the civilians. Yes. So they called it the Western Wall Commission for where the mosque is, or the Temple Mount, whichever you want to call it. I'm not taking sides. The commission came to Jerusalem on the 19th of June, 1930. Now, the commission prepared their report, yes, about the Temple Mount Western Wall, and the commission left Jerusalem on July the 19th, 1930. Yes. So after the commission made its report, the British government, military government, it was an army, yes, what do you call it? Yes, made a declaration. The previous declaration was it's the property of the Muslims. So now they're saying, hey, we want to stop violence, so we'll make a new declaration. Yes, they made an order on the 19th of May, 1931, and said, Jewish people from Europe who are coming, yes, the majority of them shall have free access to the Western Wall at the bottom of Temple Mount, at the bottom of Al-Aqsa Mosque. You see? So then, the thing is, at that time they were talking about to divide Palestine between the Palestinians or Arabs and the Jews. So what did they do? The British, yes, appointed a director for the development and for the land of Palestine on 19th July 1931, and he made a report of the land of Palestine. Yes. So that's what they did. So now many of the Arabs knew that everything was going to be divided and everything. So the Arabs revolted against the British military government. Yes, and the revolt began on the 19th of April, 1936. Yes, yes. So the Arabs were attacking anybody who was from Europe. Yes, because they saw the British as Europeans. Yes, and the colonial masters. Yes. So the thing is, but let's have a look what the British were doing. Yes, in to the Arabs at the time. Yes, and what do you call it? The Arabs made a report, and the people who made it was known as the Arab Higher Committee, AHC. And their records from the 19th of July, 1937, shows what the British forces were doing. They were raping people, they were torturing people, they were murdering people. That's what they were doing. Yes, same like what gangsters do. Yes. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's what they did, and the thing is, the British demanded them, saying, "Hey, you got to pay us money now, protection money, or we'll kill you." They called it tax, of course. It seemed like saying the Russians invade England, or or the Chinese invade America, and say, "You have to pay us money." It's called tax. If you don't pay us, we're going to kidnap you. Or they'll call it arrest, but an arrest means kidnap. You've gone to somebody else's house and said, you got to pay us cash, or somebody's going to get raped or murdered. Yes. So it's nothing new. They were doing this all over the world. No wonder Europe and America, Western Europe and America, is beautiful because of their colonies. They what do you call it, stole money, and if anyone who didn't pay, they raped them. You know, So they were taking all this cash. I live in England. It's a beautiful place. They stole so much money. By killing people, torturing them, breaking their bones. Breaking their legs and everything in places like India, in Africa. In Spain they did it. In Latin America, the French did it. In Africa. So the thing is, we're living in beautiful places because of what they did. Yes, of course, today nobody mentions these things. Why Europe is so beautiful and the rest of the world looks like what Donald Trump will say is a it's hole, a toilet hole. I mean, yes. So then, what do you call it? Yes. After the land report, the British made a new report. It's called the Peel Commission report, where they officially recommended to divide Palestine, yes, between the Arabs and the Jews. Yes, and the Peel report came out in July. Yes, and then a very important part of the Peel report is on the 19th of July, the British military colonial secretary had a secret meeting with Chaim Weizmann. Yes, and they claimed he was a leader of the Zionists, and they made plans, immediate plans to divide Palestine. Oh, they're telling us this history. We don't know if any of this is true at all. Yes, there is no evidence. So, of course, when what do you call it? Yes, many Orthodox Jews read this. They're going to say it's a conspiracy by the British and the Zionists, and many Orthodox Jews reject Israel. Yes. The thing is, of course, the media will say it's only about a quarter of Jewish people in England and America and in Western Europe don't recognize Israel. But the reality is that it's probably more than half. They don't recognize Israel. Yes, and for the Muslims, yes, the majority of them don't recognize Israel, even though their governments, some governments like Egypt, recognize Israel, but the majority of the people do not recognize Israel. It's because they think this history is true. They think it's something to do with the Jewish people. But as you can see, all this history shows the number 19, so it's totally suspicious. So at that time, historians are telling us that there was a Jewish terrorist organization, British historians especially, that they're showing that terrorism in the Middle East was invented by Jewish military organizations. For example, an organization called Irgun. And they're saying these people made random attacks against Jews, kidnapping them, stabbing them, putting explosive devices in big crowds, everything, just killing people. Yes. Then what do you call it? Yes. The thing is, many Jewish people in Israel had enough and they said, we're going to take action. So Jabotinsky, who was mentioned before, and the Haganah organization, which, what do you call it? Yes, the Haganah organization had 19 members arrested. So he spoke up and he said, if any action is taken against the Irgun, another organization, yes, it's going to have serious problems within the Jewish community, and a civil war will happen amongst Jews. So therefore, an agreement was reached on the 19th of September 1938 to avoid this civil war. This is what they're telling us is Zionist history. If anybody wants to really believe this, they can do. Or many Muslims are screaming, saying, look at this, look at this. But let's look at the actual data. Why is it all 19? Do you think this is some accident? Yes.
No.
So then, what do you call it? Yeah, it's no accident. It's just a joke. So now the Irgun who are doing random attacks on Arabs, just misusely, we're told that it's the Irgun. Who said it's the Irgun? They looked European, same like many of the British forces who were Europeans. The British could have been doing it in the French. There is no evidence that the Irgun actually did these things. Yes, the Jewish organization, because they're living in the land and they went there and they knew they were the minority. So, of course, they were afraid. And the British were actually beating up Jews. They were torturing Jews, not just the Arabs. That is well known by all Jewish people. They were terrified of the British. Many people don't know
Hmm.
this. People don't know this actually. So the Jewish people were terrified just as much as the Arabs. Well, anyway, they say that a man named David Raziel was the leader of the Irgun. He was captured by the British military, or no need to guess, on the 19th of May, 1939. Yes. So what do you call it? Yes. What do you call it? Yes. At that time, what do you call it? Yes, they said around that time the Second World War started in Europe. Yes, and the Jewish history and things that happened in the Second World War. I can't mention it here. If people want to know, if they don't read these books, then you won't understand this video. Please don't watch this video and say, "Hey, I understood everything." No, you didn't. Yes, the history during the war, yeah, what was going on, and with the Jewish community is in my book, Nazi Germany, or otherwise known as Adolf Hitler. If you haven't read it, you're not going to understand it at all. Yeah, there's no point in even you trying to guess what is going on. Yes. So at that time, the United Nations, the League of Nations, they said it was a failure, so they replaced it with the United Nations with the same people, and they added new members. And so the United Nations does a big survey amongst Jewish refugees in Europe. They interviewed 19,000 people and asked them where they would like to go. They, of course, replied Palestine because they've never heard of the word Israel. Yes. Oh, another suspicious thing is many people don't even know that the people who created Israel did not know that they were even going to call it Israel. They weren't even sure. They only decided this on the last minute. So it means that the history of Zionism is a lie, and many people are blaming the Jewish people. Yes, and the thing is, they didn't even know what they were going to call the state. Ben Gurion and the boys, they just decided this on the last minute. Can you believe that? They didn't know what they were going to call this new state. Yes, by the way, they were going to call it Palestine. Do you know this? The so-called Zionist organization in 1948 was going to call this new country Palestine. Yes.
I wasn't aware of it. And just to lay it out very clearly, it then appears as if they're another, let's say, historical boogeyman, in this case, let's call it radical political Zionism or whatever, was created just again to create a further split or further division between the cultures, or however you would say it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the main thing is they didn't know what they were going to call this new state. Yes. The thing is, more information is in the book. I will not go into that. So it shows that the history of Zionism is a total fraud. Yes, they've invented this so that then the Muslims will hate the Jews, and vice versa. They've
Mm.
invented other history saying the Irgun was doing all these attacks so that the the Jews will hate the Muslims and the Muslims, etc. Many other
So it's
things.
always the same.
And
Attribute something to a particular group, although within that group you already control the supposed leaders or whatever, and even that can be invented. Well, it's an amazing system. You can always only have a few
not only that,
actors.
many of these groups didn't even
Yeah.
exist.
Hmm.
They've invented the
Even
history.
that. Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. And the thing about Jerusalem, yes, it's in my book, Jerusalem is in Europe. If you haven't read it, don't guess. And don't turn around and make alleged stories and say, this is this or that's that. It's no good. It's causing conflict. People get hurt. Yes, people are getting hurt. People insult each other. They slap each other. Many people are spitting on people. It's not this is not shalom or salam or Islam or whatever people are talking about. Yes, that's that. But anyway, 19,000 people, the survey. So now the next thing is, now we've come to 1946, and what do you call it? Yes, the British turn around and say, what do you call it? There's Jewish terrorists who've blown up the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Yes. And the thing is, they turn around and say it was a Jewish organization. So the thing is, the British were advertising it. They still talk about it. And then many Muslims and Christians, there's many Christian sects who say the Jews murdered Christ, and there's a lot of hatred against Jews in Europe. That's a fact. Yes. So the thing is, what do you call it? The British were advertising everywhere. What do you call it? Yes, the Jewish terrorists blew up the King David Hotel. Now, the story that day that was very big that day in 1946, yes, was that they turned around and said many people died, maybe 90 or 91. They say something like this, and they said 19 of these people were Jews. And they said, how could Jewish organizations kill their own people, 19 Jews? Yes. So the thing is that became a famous story. Then after that, or around that time, what do you call it? Yes, um, what do you call it? Yes, they turned around and said that there was another attack by a Jewish terrorist organization at the British Officers Club in Jerusalem. Yes, known as the Goldsmith Officers Club, and they turned around and said many many media channels at the time turned around and said 19 soldiers were killed. Yes, at the time, and sometimes they've changed it, but they're updating it all the time. But the strange thing is, why would it just be 19? Why would it just be 19? Yes, and then what do you call it? When Israel formed, yes, around the time Israel formed, yes, that the Haganah was, the British said it was a terrorist organization, and then they say this was then became the Israeli Defense Forces. They turned around and said a major turning point happened, fighting between Jews and Arabs in Palestine while the British are still there, was that when Jewish leaders announced on the 19th of November 1947 of obligatory military conscription for all men and women aged between 17 and 25 by the Haganah. Yeah, it's all 19th of November, 19, this and that. So the thing is, you can tell that there's somebody is telling lies here. Yes. So at the same time, they turn on and say that what do you call it? The Jewish fighters, the British called them terrorists at the time. Yes, it suited them very well. The French said it. The Americans were saying it in their media. Many people were saying it. They called them Jewish terrorists, and they said that what do you call it? Many Arabs were forced to leave their homes in the Israeli side, and they said, what do you call it? Maybe up to 500,000 or more went to live in the West Bank, and 190,000 or 19,000 Arab refugees went to Gaza. Yes, so it still goes on. This is what I've shown you is nothing so far. It's actually worse than what you're hearing. Yes, and then he turned around and said that the Arabs could not fight back against the Jewish military because the chief secretary of the British military government in Palestine explained this to the United Nations on the 19th of July 1947. He said the British military government made sure and they went out of the way to prevent the Arabs from establishing an army. Oh, was this really true? So that's what they turned on and said. Yes, that's what they turned on and said. Um, yes, and then what do you call it? Yes, according to the Palestinian Bureau of Statistics, they said that there was actually more than 2 million refugees. But and many historians say that what do you call it? There was about 2 million not refugees, but Palestinians. Yes, but other historians, like in Al Jazeera and other places, they say that there was about 1.9 million Arabs were made refugees beyond the borders of the states. But it's got something to do with 19 or multiples of 19. Yes? Yeah. And then what do you call it? So now is 1947, 1948, and this is very strange. Yes. What do you call it? Yes, the United States president tried to deny it and change his position, but on the 19th of March, 1948, the United States announced and declared that what do you call it? There should be no Israel. Basically, they said that Palestine should be ruled by the United Nations, and it should not be divided into an Arab state or Jewish state. There should be no Palestine for the Arabs and no Palestine for the Israelis, or no Israel and no Palestine. Yes, this is what they're telling us. What the Americans said. Yes. So what do you call it? The British left and gave up Israel on the 14th of May or around then. Yes. And what do you call it? Many Jewish organizations were taking over all the land because they had weapons. Oh, how can they have weapons and the Arabs didn't? So this is strange. Yes, who gave them the weapons? But anyway, Israel declared independence on the 14th of May, 1948. But it wasn't a big thing because a large number of Jews, or the majority of Jews around the world, didn't recognize it. They didn't even care. Until on the 19th of May, Israel declared a state of emergency, and this has been renewed every single year since then. But we've got to mention 1948 and show both sides. There is the Israeli side, so they declare emergency on the 19th of May. What about the Arabs? They didn't create a Palestinian state. What happened? Yes. So now the British made sure that there was no Arab army, that they didn't have weapons, they couldn't do anything. They're running away like dogs. That's what we're told in history. That what do you call it? They're losers. They can't do anything. So what do you call it? Yes. What is so mysterious is that check this out. The Israelis should have taken all the land and everything, but they failed because what happened? Read it yourself.
In May 1948, the British started abandoning their positions, and these were taken over by Jewish military organizations such as the Haganah and the Irgun. By 18th May 1948, the Jewish military forces had taken control of Jerusalem, but on the same day, the Arab Legion arrived
Yes, the next page.
in.
Arrived in
Oh,
Jerusalem.
I didn't see the next page yet, so I'm sorry. Arrived in Jerusalem. How could this be possible if the Arabs had no military and had no weapons? Good
Yeah,
question. Uh,
yes. So now the
mhm.
main battles for the city of Jerusalem began the next day on 19 May 1948. So that's why Israel declared a state of what do you call it, emergency. Who the hell is this Arab Legion? Isn't this totally suspicious now? Are you beginning to see what's going on?
Well, indeed,
The
especially if we
British made
consider
sure.
that they have already been all around the place, so even if someone calls themselves Arab, you can't be sure who are their masters or what's really going on.
Okay. So now the thing is, if anybody looks at the photographs of what do you call it, I sent you before, um, what do you call it? Yes. Let me just show you. Um, what do you call it? Yes. Um, people will say, if anybody looks at history and they don't check it, what do you call it? What does this look like to you? The Middle East in World War II? Was it invaded by the Russians? Or was it invaded by the Chinese? Or what will it look like to you if you don't know any history at all
Well, it
when
just
you
looks
see
like
this
they were
happening?
in today. I would say it looks like from a today's perspective and what I know of the cultures and people today, it looks like an Indian invasion, basically.
The Indians invaded. Okay, but now the thing is, it's not an Indian army, it was run by the British. Yes, so now let me just show you this. And then this is one of the most craziest things ever, that even when I found out, I had the biggest shock of my life, that even me, I couldn't believe it. I thought, what the how could this be possible? It was like totally an impossible thing that I never would have imagined. Yes, that I never would have imagined. Let me just see. Yes. So now the thing is, what you call it, what many people don't know, they imagine an Arab legion or the Arabs invaded, what you call it, Israel. Small Israel, and there's thousands of Arabs, and they've got all this land around them. Yes, and we are told this again and again and again. Yes, that the Arabs wanted war. Yes, and we are told in official history, yes, that in 1948, Arab countries and Arab soldiers and Arab this and that invaded Israel. They wanted to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. Many Jewish people believe this too. This is from the U.S. State Department, what do you call it, and things like this. You'll find it everywhere. Yes. Yeah, have you heard these things that when Israel declared independence,
Yes.
what do you call it? The Arabs invaded. Yes, and they're teaching this to Jewish people also. All over the world, here's the Jewish Virtual Library. They're actually teaching this. So now they say the Arab Legion invaded, and it's now just coming to Jerusalem, and it's started fighting on the 19th of May. Is this really true? Anybody will think that this is true. Yes?
It
It's hard
generally
not to
is.
believe it.
Of course, yeah, generally
Yeah,
is.
yeah, even I believed it. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, I am no
Well, especially
mega,
with
mega,
the
mega
especially
genius.
with the other backstories, if they are made up of, political Zionism or whatever the details are, then historically it would could be somewhat understandable to say, okay, there is cultures or forces or whatever that really oppose each other or, hate each other or want to fight. But of course, we don't know if it's fabricated, and we don't know who is behind these forces and who gave them the weapons. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, it's not, and now this is not about weapons. So now have a look at this picture again. And I want people to think all over the world, this is not India invading the Middle East. It is the East India Company. It's not even the British, but they will tell you it's British in World War One. Who is the East India Company? So now what is going to be the biggest shock in the world to everybody, and many of my friends in Israel were shocked too. Even I was shocked too. I thought I knew everything, but this shocked me. Yes, the Arab Legion. Yes, the the officers who were serving in the Arab Legion, you can read it on the second line. These officers had usually been serving British officers. Yes, what do you call it? And what do you call it? Indians and Kenyans and things like that. It goes throughout the history. But anyway, about the Arab Legion. Now, the Arab Legion was run by a man called Glub. Can you see the fourth line before the bottom?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, you can see it. Yes, and what do you call it? Yes, Glub. He was the best trained military unit in the Middle East, the best trained British military unit, and arguably the best British military outside Europe and America. It's the best army. Yes, in the world outside Europe. America didn't really have much of an army in World War One. It's the best army outside Europe. Can you imagine this? So now this army, yes, and what was this army? Yes, many people don't know what this army was. Yes, so what do you call it? Yes, it was his Arab Legion, Glub. Glub was a British general. Yes, and they invaded Jerusalem. Yeah, the soldiers. Yeah, maybe there was Indians there, maybe there was Arabs there, and it was given the name Arab Legion. You understand? This type of a name is not a name by what do you call it? Yes, by the local people. It is a title and a name that was given by the British. Can you see it?
Hmm.
Yes.
Kind of reminds me
Yes.
of the French Foreign Legion. But go ahead. Hmm.
Yeah. Yes. Same thing. These legions were made by what do you call it? These colonial empires. Yes, and not only that, all the officers in the Arab Legion were British. Yes, let me just find this. Um, all the officers who were fighting, you're going to be shocked by this, and you're going to think, I really can't believe this. Yes, that what do you call it? In each of the battalions, yes, in each battalion of Glub Pasha, they even gave him a local name. There were at least 4 British officers commanding everything per battalion, and they call it the Arab Legion or Jordanians or Arabs or whatever. What do you think this? The British records, even in 1949, at that time, it had 46 of their army officers commanding the legion. So the British said, hey, we've just given up Palestine officially to the United Nations, but the British just invaded on the 19th of May. And the whole world thinks, what do you call it? Yes, it was an Arab legion. It is not
Hmm.
an Arab legion. It had nothing to do with the Arabs. Same
So
like,
it's basically
um,
like a British Foreign Legion at that time.
no, it's officially known. Have a look. The Arab Legion was financed by the British, commanded by British officers. Read it yourself, everybody. Yes, and what do you call it? It that was the legion that captured Jerusalem in 1948. Yes, they were fighting the Jews. But now the history has gone down. It was the Arabs fighting. The Arabs had no weapons. Now from the south came somebody called Gamal Abdel Nasser. Gamal Abdel Nasser came from Egypt. But at that time, Egypt was occupied by the British, and the British army was at the Suez Canal.
Hmm.
He couldn't have crossed that canal without the British. He couldn't have even had a single gun. They couldn't have had any guns. Won't they be fighting the British in their own lands? The British had martial law. Won't they have to fight the British first to get to Israel? Yeah. So nobody is thinking of this. So these people, it's actually the same side. You see?
Hmm.
Yes. So they were showing they're pretending to give Israel independence, but what they made sure is that when they went in, they were shooting the Jewish armies at the time, and then they supported their fake Jewish army. You understand?
Hmm.
Yes, and that is the Israel that's there today. They rule. They still rule it. There is no other Israel. Yes, it's ruled by the same people. Are you beginning to see what I'm saying? Yes, eh, you
Yes,
see.
I'm just thinking of how nefarious it is because, on the one hand, you would tell people, all right, for varying reasons, probably ultimately one could say fleeing from the New World Order, you move to Israel, then for understandable reasons you may want to defend it, and then you get slaughtered by a faked up army that's financed maybe by even the same guys that helped you get away from them in the first place. So I don't know how to say it, but like,
Okay, can you imagine if in 50 years' time somebody is going to tell us that the Japanese invaded Iraq in the Iraq War? Is anybody going to
mhm.
believe this?
Well, if they have their way, then yes, but history will decide that over
Okay,
time.
but it's a fact. The Japanese did invade Iraq. Let me just show you.
All right.
Yes, here it is. The Japanese army went with the Americans. You see? So now
Right,
the thing
right,
is,
right.
it was the
Exactly. Yes.
British,
Exactly.
yes,
Yes. Yes.
under
Yes.
American command. So it was an American invasion, and these were just the workers. So there was Arab soldiers in the Arab Legion. They were the workers. It was the British once again. And the East India Company weapons, East India bullets. Who is the East India Company? People are going to have to check this. The East India Company financed the invasion of England in 1688. The dates are a bit fake. Yes, by William of Orange, a fake history. Who really rules England? Nobody is thinking these things. So that's why the thing is, if people want to know, I've got 20 books. If you're not going to read it, and then afterwards trying to make comments and something and saying, David said this, David said that, you haven't read anything and you're going to come out with it. Yes, please don't come out with your opinions. Here is one of my books, The Mud Flood, but many books that focus on the number 19. Yes, um, about the 19, you won't understand it unless if you read it. The number 19 in the fake monuments in ancient Egypt. The number 19 in the fake Second World War is in my book in Nazi Germany. It explains how almost all the major events in World War II are based on number 19, and how even today's world, how they're using the number 19. If you don't read it, don't don't try to judge what I'm saying today or the situation in the Middle East. The number 19 used to describe for the scientific facts so that no one can figure out if it's a flat or a round earth, and the fake history of ancient Greece is explained in this book. Now, if people haven't read my books, they shouldn't say, hey, David said this or that, because the rest of the story is in the books. I'm talking about my books, obviously. The Alpha and the Amiga code, September the 11th, number 19, everything, and then the matrix codes that goes into more events and to do with artificial intelligence, and the number 19, everything. If you don't read these books, you're not going to know what this is about. Yes, and you're going to still think, hey, the new world order, this and that. Who are they? What are they? What's going on? Don't come to a conclusion, and don't say David said this and that if you haven't read everything and investigated things and done any of your research. You don't want to read my own books? Go and do many more years of research yourself. Yes, if you don't want to read them. Yes. So now let's go on to the next point. So now they were fighting, what do you call it? The Arab Legion is fighting the Jewish forces. Yes, are fighting the Jewish forces. And so then the people who said, I represent the Jewish people, who said, I'm the state of Israel now, they started attacking Jewish forces too. So after they defeated the Jewish forces, the Arab Legion and the Israeli army, they defeated the Jewish forces. Yes, what do you call it? Yes, a second truce was declared on the 19th of July. The first truce was declared at the end of May. Yes. and it took effect in June. So what do you call it? The truce ended in July. It wasn't a proper truce because people were still fighting. Even the other truce or the ceasefire from 19th of July to 15th of October was another scam that didn't last. And it looks like they've invented the full history. All of it seems like a lie because then let's have a look at the records of these so-called ceasefires. It's a fake history. They're totally lying, and they're saying, hey, the Arabs invaded. Yes, to give the Muslims the blame and the Arabs the blame and everything, and they've done this for that time. So now the United Nations passes a resolution on the 19th of August, yes, 1948, and this resolution said that nobody can break the truce. Now, this resolution was so important because they used it several times. They demanded this several times, even 19 years later when the Six-Day War happened. And the Six-Day War happened 19 years later between the Arabs and the Jews. Yes? So, what do you call it? Yes? And so when another truce was declared because the fighting continued, yes, another truce was declared, yes, and because the fighting continued, because they're saying nobody kept this truce. So another truce, the United Nations passed another truce. What do you call it? Yes, I think. What do you call it? Yes, let's see. They passed another resolution on the 19th of October, yes, 1948, to declare another truce because the last truce wasn't kept. Yes. So then the big question of Palestinian refugees, Palestinian refugees, Palestinian refugees. Many people don't even check the history of Palestinian refugees, and they're willing to talk about it and shout about it. Let's have a look. Yes, what do we see about Palestinian refugees? Yes, historians tell us they were thrown out by Jewish forces. Were they thrown out by Jewish forces or by British forces? So on the 19th of November 1948, the United Nations passed a resolution and established the UN Relief for Palestinian Refugees. 19th of November 1948. Oh, they changed its name and said now this has become the UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. So where did these refugees come from? Now, Raphael, if you and me, if we're going to be planning to, what do you call it, kill people, destroy their homes and burn their villages, and we're going to do this on the planet Mars, are we going to keep it a secret or we're going to destroy the evidence?
Well, ideally destroy the evidence if possible.
Of course! Of course, we're attacking the planet Mars. We don't know what they'll do to us if they ever came to Earth to get us. So now the Israelis, they're supposed to be amongst the smartest people in the world, many people say, but they were so smart. They even kept it and they gave it to the world. And they said, oh, we made an order on the 19th of May, 1948 to order to conquer Arab villages, to kill the men, to destroy and burn the villages. Oh, sure. Not only this, they've even given it to the world to see it, that we made this order on the 19th of May to kill men, burn villages, destroy villages. What type of an army is going to admit this and publish these kind of things? Huh? And why was it the 19th anyway? If people can't smell all of this, then there's something totally wrong with them. Yes. So now, what do you call it? Yes. And the British Legion has taken Jerusalem City. Yes. And the Jews failed to take it. Yes. So what do you call it? Israeli forces at that time, they fought hard to come near the city of Jerusalem. So now they call it West Jerusalem because it was a village at that time. So now Jerusalem is grown into a big city, and other villages around it are now part of Greater Jerusalem. So there was a village called Beit Shemesh, and they turn around and say Israeli forces fought hard to take control of Beit Shemesh. Who were they fighting? The Arab Legion wasn't there, and the Arabs don't have weapons. They were fighting Jews, the Israeli army. Yes, and other people connected to them, and they fought hard to take, and they set up their military main headquarters, because at Beit Shemesh, because it was the main road to Jerusalem, and they chose this location because it was 19 miles west of the old city of Jerusalem. How wonderful! Oh yes, and the Israeli forces fought to capture Beit Shemesh. Yeah, and they're telling us it was a fierce battle, blah blah blah. They finally conquered it on the 19th of September, 1948. Yes. So now, where is the border going to be between Israel and the Arabs? So then Israel launches an operation called Ha Ha or Ha Ha, but let's call it Ha Ha Ha. They launched an operation on the 19th of October 1948 so that it will determine the final borders. Yes, who has more land? Yes, so now there is a famous place for the Arabs anyway, and they're always talking about Arabs are losing their homes in what do you call it, a place called Sheikh Jarrah. I like the name how the Arabs say Sheikh Jarrah. Yes, in Jerusalem. Yes. Oh, so the Arab Legion took over Sheikh Jarrah on the 19th of May 1948. They're going to call it an Arab Legion, but it's the British took over. Of course, they left problems there that this problem continues today. British Army officers controlled it, they did it, and the workers, of course, went in, they got paid. Somebody who's just working, you know what I mean, and things like this. So, what do you call it? The Sheikh Jarrah, yes, invasion on the 19th of May 1948 has left many problems. Like, for example, we're always hearing of these conflicts, yes? And so for example, according to international organizations, according to the UN and others, they said 19 households of Palestinians were at risk of forced eviction by their homes by the Israeli military. Of course, they don't send civilian military; it's always a military that they send. Yes, so it just so happens to be 19 houses. So, for example, there was a major conflict with Gaza and Hamas in 2021. Yes, so at that time, it was because of this Sheikh Jarrah and people's houses being evicted. Immediately after the conflict, yes, what do you call it, Israeli military courts and the military, they throw out another family immediately on the 19th of January and demolish their home. Sure, there's nothing suspicious about any of these things. Of course, because it was the British Arab Legion, yes, that caused this problem in Sheikh Jarrah in the first place. It's not an Arab Legion, it's the British Legion. Yes, so immediately 19 British unions and civil organizations condemned what Israel did. Yes, yeah, 19 of them. I'm sure you're beginning to see what the hell is going on. So the thing is, because they're fighting about, refugees and all the property they left behind in the land. Yes, you know, the state of Israel, yes, makes a law of absentee property law and says Israel is going to take control of all the property of all these people who had to run away from their homes like dogs. Yes, and before the date of 1948, 19th of May 1948. Why did they choose this date? Why? You see? So as you can see, yes, that all sides are using this. Yes, so all these sides are controlled by the same people. It's not Arabs, it's not Jews, it's the people in power. So now let's have a look. So in 1948, Operation Yoav was very important. During this time, the Israeli Navy had its first major battle in history because it's a new country. It had its battle on the 19th of October, 1948. Wait a minute, why are they fighting at sea? You understand? It doesn't make sense. It seemed like saying Austrian
Mhm.
Navy has a battle for Austrian independence in Australia.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense because it's a land war in 1940s and 50s with Bedouins, desert people, poor people. Yes. So now, the thing is, Israel has just been formed, but they've already got an air force mysteriously. Yes, in 1948. How could you already have an air force? And check this out. They say during the War of Independence, 33 pilots were killed or went missing, and 19 of these were known as Machalniks. Machalniks is a long story why they had these titles. You have to
19
understand.
of 33, just to be clear.
Yeah. Oh, same like when Hitler became the chancellor in 1933. Another invented history of Hitler. Yes, and 33 is related to the number 19. Number 19 is part of the 33rd degree. Yes, in many secret organizations. To understand this, it's more explained in my books. If you don't read them, you won't know. So don't judge and don't make your own comments and other things and disturb other people. If you're going to be a nationalist or evangelicalist or Islamist or anything like this. But anyway, what do you call it? Yes, let's check this out. Yes, what do you call it? It's a miracle because at that time it seemed like the Europeans went to America. America had its native people. So what do you call it? In 1948, when the British left officially, there was only 650,000 Jewish people in Israel. But 19 months later, exactly 19 months later, Israel had 1 million Jewish people. It took them 19 months. Yes. So now, what do you call it? And about this 1 million people, it's suspicious. We're talking about it. That was what do you call it? What year was that? It was in what do you call it? In 1949. But many people wanted many Jews to be there. The people who wanted to set up their own states. Yeah, they weren't even going to call it Israel. They were going to call it Palestine, Ben Gurion and the boys. Yes. So the thing is, they originally had a plan of originally had a plan that they wanted to have 1 million people in Israel. This plan was created in 1944. Yes, and they hoped to have it exactly after 18 months in 1944. When the 19th month came, after that plan was made, there wasn't a million Jewish people in what they call Palestine or Israel. Yes. Well, anyway, so in 1949, Israel made an armistice agreement with the Arab Legion and Gamal Abdel Nasser, the so-called Egyptian army, even though Britain was ruling Egypt, which doesn't make sense. Yes, and what do you call it? They call it the Jordanian army now. First, it was the Arab Legion. Now it's called the Jordanian army. Yes, mysteriously, in many historians give different names. Yes, so then they say on average. Yes, what do you call it? The Arab Legion Jordanian army positions were 19 kilometers away from the Mediterranean. Why did it have to be 19 kilometers? Yes. Why would anybody choose this? So it just shows that either they're lying about the borders, or if this was actually true at the time that the military Arab Legion was in these positions, that it means this is so crazy. Who the hell is going to calculate and say, are we exactly 19 kilometers away from the
Yeah, I was about to
Mediterranean Sea?
say maybe it's for good luck, or it's simply for historical coding that those who
It's
know
nothing to
can
do with
know.
good luck. There's more.
Yes.
That's when the Quran comes into it. Yes, it's because I learned this information from the Quran. I'm not going to lie. Yes, and the thing is, I noticed there's many people who've made blogs and posts against me because they think I'm preaching Islam. I'm not preaching Islam. If somebody's going to say, David, how did you think of this and learn all this? Because it's such crucial information. Yeah, I examined the Quran. The Quran like gave a few instructions, and then I
Just
found
to be
it.
clear, because you have mentioned this many times already, and maybe people still don't get it, but if you are a researcher, then of course you will give your sources for especially relevant information, and that is just the source that you have it from, and this has nothing to do with religion in the first place, but about sourcing documents and
Right.
explaining where
Yeah, yeah.
information comes from.
I will tell you something. The prejudice. It's like if I'm going to turn around and say, I found this in the Bible, no one's going to say, oh, you're a Christian, or no one's going to say you're preaching Christianity. Just because I said I found it in the Quran, that's it. He's preaching Islam. No, I'm not. I found some information in the Bible. I found some things in the Quran. Now, this major thing to do with the number 19, I specifically found it in the Quran. Simple as. So if anybody wants to know more details how I found it, they can go and read the Quran themselves. Simple. Yes. And the thing is, it's because we in the West, we've not read this book. Yes. We seem to know more about biblical history because we don't know. And this is a serious thing. It's a global world order. It is not a Western or Christian world order. It's got nothing to do with Christianity. So it's very important people examine what this book says before it's too late. We don't even know what's going on. Even I can't understand this, even after all of this research. Anyway, let's move on, Raphael. Yes, so Israel signed an armistice agreement. So the war, what do you call it? Yes, let's see what the World Jewish Congress says. The war lasted between Israel and the Arabs in this 1948 independence war. It lasted for 19 months. The war started in November 1947 when the United Nations and the British at the United Nations adopted the plan to separate Palestine. And 19 months later, the war ended in July 1949. Yeah, it just so exactly lasted 19 months. Yes. So now the thing is, what do you call it? The Palestinians, they celebrate this, not celebrate. They remember this, and they say it's a sad day, and they celebrate it every year on the 15th of May, and they call it Nakba Day. And Nakba Day and Israeli Independence Day usually occur at the same time once every 19 years. Yes, because what do you call it? Israel is using a calendar. Yes, that's based on 19 years on the Metonic cycle. That's another long story. It's in my books. I'm not going to go deep into this. So now, what do you call it? Yes. Um, what do you call it? Yes. So now Israel forms a parliament called the Knesset. Yes. Notice that the meaning, yes, is what do you call it? Northern European or Turkish meaning. It means the seats of the Khan, Knesset, the seats of the Khan. Yes,
I always
where the
wondered
Khan
about
is
that
sitting.
name. Yeah.
Yes. So the thing is, they form it, and the first Knesset, it lasted for 19 months. Yes. The first elections were in 25 January 1949. The next one, 30th of July 1951. 19 months, the first Knesset. Nothing suspicious about this. you know. So now let's see Egypt on the other side. What do you call it? The British are still occupying Egypt. Yes, it's an occupation. Same like Palestine. And people are saying free Palestine. So how could Egypt have invaded the Arabs if at that time it was occupied by the British? So at that time, the Egyptian military officers, they were Egyptians, but they were trained by the British, given weapons by the British, everything by the British. The military takes over, and at that time they said there was a king there called Farouk, and they got rid of him. Yes, on the 18th of June. Yes, they got rid of him, declared it a republic on the 18th, but the first full day as a republic was the 19th of June. Yes. So the thing is, they're calling it a republic. What type of banana republic is this? With the British Army walking around everywhere. You know what I mean? So at
Yeah.
that time, yes. So the British agree. Check this out. This is what they're telling us in history. So it means that there is no Egyptian army, and there is no British. It's all the same people. It's all the same side. It's one side. So the British military authorities agreed to end their military occupation of Egypt on the 19th of October 1954. They went with Egypt with guns and raped and tortured people, forced them to build all these monuments, everything, build the Suez Canal, everything. They didn't have tourist visas. You understand? These people didn't go there with visas. They went with guns. Yes, they raped and tortured people. You understand? When they got drunk, they were raping people. They had nothing else to do. Yes, and they were stealing money, stealing resources, bringing back minerals, everything. They built Europe, America, Australia, and all these other places with it. Oh, today, if these people come from these poorer countries, their ancestors worked a lot to provide so that Europe and America is beautiful. Everyone thinking, what are they doing here? What is this? What is this sort of character in Europe and America? For many people, but not everybody. So now let's have a look. What do you call it? So the British agree to leave Egypt on the 19th of October, 1954. Of course, they chose 19. There was no leaving. There was nothing or anything there. It's just new management. That's why they could just put a fake date there. Nothing happened. So the British complete evacuation of troops took place on the 18th of June 1956. Celebrations took place on 19th of June 1956 because Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the Egyptian leader or one of the military officers, announced the end of martial law and announced that the British had gone. So what do you call it? Yes, that was like the main celebration, 19th of June, the end of martial law. Yes. So as you can see, they're doing all this on purpose. Yes. So now at that time, yes. So if the British are ruling, it means the British are what do you call it? Yes, they're doing everything there. There is no Egypt, it doesn't exist. And these generals who took over and everything, it's still the British, and they're from the East India Company and the other companies. Yes, and they built these fake monuments. Yes. So now what happens? So the Americans, yes, they turn around and say that they're going to withdraw financial aid for the Aswan Dam projects on the River Nile. Now, the Aswan Dam and other things was actually to stabilize the River Nile, or Egypt would be like Bangladesh, the water flowing everywhere, anywhere, and things like this. And this also raises the question of what is a power station, because over there, a lot of it is used to generate power. But anyway, the United States says that what do you call it? Yes, that we are going to stop the financial aid, and so do many other banks in England, France, everywhere, all these other companies. So President Nasser, 6 days later, he says that his army is going to take over the Suez Canal, and Israeli ships would be blocked. Basically, things like this. Yes. So that's what happens because of the American declaration on the 19th. It's known as the Suez Canal crisis
But
of
then again, we can
1956.
expect if they ultimately are all ruled by the same masters, this is just a
Yes,
stage
it's
play.
clear from the mathematics.
Yes, I'm just saying
Anyway,
that also this conflict or whatever then is just a stage play. Like, oh, I'm blocking you, I'm not happy with your state or whatever. It's all just a
no, no,
stage
no,
act.
they're not blocking anything. Nothing happened. Soon you're going to
Hmm.
realize nothing happened. They're lying. They only said this because there is more. You'll realize it more. So now, what do you call it? They turn around and say that Egypt and the United States, they couldn't make a peace agreement, so that Israel took action because it wanted its ships to go through, or otherwise, what are they going to do? It's blockaded. So they invaded Gaza and the Sinai. Many people don't know where Gaza and the Sinai is. What do you call it? Um, what do you call it? The Sinai is not very deeply populated, but the Sinai Peninsula is between Israel and Egypt. Israel is not a big land. It's about 50 to 100 kilometers from east to west. It's very small, 70 or 80 kilometers. Yes, from Jordan, Jordanian border to the other side. So they invade. Yes, what do you call it? Yes, and then it said that the last troops to leave Gaza after the conflict was on the 19th of March 1957, according to the US State Department. Yes, and many people dispute this. Yes, so what do you call it? Yes, so what happens is this is of course they're going to show that the United Nations was a major player. They really cared so much. Yes, what do you call it? At that time, the British and the French invaded the Suez Canal region also. So on the 4th of November, a resolution was passed by the United Nations, and 19 countries did not support the resolution because they had some involvement in the conflict. These 19 countries involved included Britain and France. Sure, 19. It always has to be 19. Yes, and it was a big scandal. Yes, because the British and the French were permanent Security Council members, and they, what do you call it, didn't vote. Yes. So what do you call it? Yes. So of course they're showing the United Nations is so angry, and they're telling Israel get out. Yes, so on the 19th of January 1957, the UN adopted resolutions demanding Israel gets out completely. Then they made the demand again on the 2nd of February that year. So then Israel turned around and says, hey, what are we going to do? Poor country, we're just small. If they block our shipping, what are we going to do? Can the United States give us a guarantee for shipping, for freedom of shipping through the Suez Canal? This is recorded in the British National Archives. It's in the Jewish Virtual Library, what do you call it, on the 19th of February 1957. Oh, in the end, they temporarily solved this problem and Israel withdrew its forces in 1957. Yes, so at that time, the hero of the war was, what do you call it, the 6 Day War, was Moshe Dayan. Now, this is very important. Yes, because many people have not checked. Now, Moshe Dayan, it's very important this. Yes, Moshe Dayan, they say he only had one eye. Yes, he was the Israeli general chief of the defense forces. He had one eye. Now, the letter Y in Hebrew, yes, what is it normally in European words?
The letter Y? I'm not sure what you're referring
Yes,
to.
Jerusalem. How is it pronounced in European?
All right, with a J, with a J. usually. Yeah.
Ah, so Moshe Dayan, pronounce it in European.
Moshe Dajan.
Ah, wow, Dayan! So now, what do you call it? Yes, mysteriously, yes, after this time, yes, we can't seem to find much of a record of it. Yes, um, what do you call it? Muslim history, yes, now talks about something. What do you call it? Yes, it's because they made sure that this man, yes, what do you call it? He looks like
Um,
100% like an actor. Yes, and his name they chose it was Dayan or Dajan.
because
Now
I'm
the
thinking
Arabs
of
and the
there is
Muslims
a
will say,
concept called Dajjal, no?
yeah, yes. So I'm getting there. I'm sending it
Oh
to you.
my God. And
The
the
concept,
one-eyed. Okay, I'm curious what you're gonna say
the
now. Please go on.
one-eye Antichrist called Dajjal. So now the Arabs used to turn around and say, the Dajjal is coming, Dajjal is coming, Dajjal is coming. He is the Antichrist, the one eye. Can you see they did this on purpose?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was the biggest hero of Israel for their military forces, even to this day. That in the history of Israel, Moshe Dayan, but they're going to say Moshe Dayan. So mysteriously, these things turned up in Islamic books, and they're being published immediately in Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in the immediate neighbors in Egypt, and then they spread after that. So this was going out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. As you can see, they planned and organized all this. Yes. Yes, but many people don't really know what's going on, so they organize it. Like what many people don't know is that Moshe Dayan or Moshe Dajan or Dajjal or this Dajan, the Antichrist. Yes, um, what do you call it? Yes, you're going to be surprised by this. Yes, what do you call it? Yes, what he did. What do you call it? Yes, um, what do you call it? He turned around and said, "This is going to be very shocking to people." Yes. What do you call it? Yes. Um, he in 1967. Before we get there, I shouldn't spoil it, but this part, what do you call it? Yes. When he did take over Jerusalem, he failed in 1948, but 19 years later he took over. What do you call it? Yes, what do you call it? He turned around and said that the Temple Mount is what do you call it? Yes, was actually Muslim, and he basically what do you call it? Gave it to the Muslims. Yes, and he didn't give it to the Jews. Yes. Let me just show this, like the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, so that what do you call it? People will know I'm not making this up because you won't expect this. Yes. Now, what did Moshe Dayan or what this Dajjal do? He's one of the biggest things he ever did. Yes, was he forbid Jewish people to pray at the Temple Mount or the Temple Mount where the Muslims say Al-Aqsa Cathedral. Yes. Let me just show. Um, Al-Aqsa Cathedral on Temple Mount. What do you call it? Yes. What he did was he basically said, Jews, no. Muslims, yes. Wait a minute. Isn't that strange? He's supposed to be supporting the Jews, but then he takes the Jewish army there and he says, no, no, it's for the Muslims. Yes. You understand? Don't you
Yeah,
find this
of
suspicious?
course, it makes no sense. If the history is true, the only sense could be to create even further division and make everyone even more angry at each other. Especially because it seems every few
Yes.
years they decide someone
Yes.
else is allowed to go there or not, or whatever, you know. And of course, making up the whole
Yes.
idea that
So
this is an important
what
place
he
in the
does,
first place, yeah, to fight over, right?
yeah,
Yeah, go
what
ahead.
he does is that he denies the Israeli right to Temple Mount. He, in what do you call it? Posh words they use is that he relinquishes it. And check this out. Yes, you can see that these people are all together and then things like this because then you can see if you don't read my book, Jerusalem is in Europe, you won't understand this. Here he is meeting the Arabs. Yes, after he supposedly conquers the city and the priests and the imams and all this, they're plotting and planning and scheming. Don't let the Jews hear. Yes, it's all yours. Don't worry. I've come here with the Israeli army, but we're on your side. What's going on here? Yes. And then at the same time, He's wearing the one eye patch, and they're advertising the Dajjal is here, the Dajan, Moshe Dajan, Dayan. You see? Yes, this is the end of times. It's the Antichrist. The war is coming. It's the end of the world. We got to prepare. Everybody's got to get ready to kill, kill, kill. What is this? It's disgusting. Isn't shalom or salam supposed to mean peace? Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, the city of peace. If this is what they want to create, a new Jerusalem, aren't they supposed to be trying to create peace? But let me show you how Moshe Dayan or Dajan, he took over. So now the thing is, he's the hero of the war with Egypt, but he failed in 1948 to fight the Arab Legion. So now he mysteriously defeats Egypt, but then what do you call it? Yes, he resigns as the chief of staff for the Israeli Defense Force after the war, and 19 months later, he gets elected to the Israeli parliament. 19 months later. Yes. Well, yeah. Can you see this? It's all a joke. Everything that people are believing in history, it's all a joke. Fake heroes, fake geniuses or jinns, where people are worshipping these geniuses or jinns. Yes, on each side, Arab hero, Muslim hero, Jewish hero, Israeli hero. So now let's have a look. So now, what do you call it? Yes, Israel withdraws from Gaza and Sinai, and United Nations peacekeepers come. On the 19th of May, 1967, yes, now that the British have gone and the Israelis have gone after the Suez War, yes, and the United Nations army is there. On 19th of May, 1967, President Nasser of Egypt demands that the United Nations get out. Oh, this demand is on the 19th, and it's accepted on the 19th. Get out on the 19th, and it's accepted on the 19th. So now, when this happens, everybody says that what do you call it? Yes, yeah, and what do you call it? That the 6-Day War started after this. That Gamal Abdel Nasser, President Nasser, told them to get out, and he was planning to invade Israel. So of course, mass media. Gaza is about to invade Israel. Gaza is going to destroy Israel, going to kill people, everything. So Egypt's going to do it. So now Israel has to defend itself. So what do you call it? On the 5th of June, 1967, this is the 6-Day War. Israel invades Egypt with its air force only. It has an airstrike for 190 minutes, 190. Yes, and the entire or the majority of the Egyptian air force was destroyed. Now, and they turn out and say it's a miracle, yes, that they did this. They destroyed it and the Egyptians didn't know. But let's have a look what they're exactly telling us, the exact details. At that time, what do you call it, is Egypt had 19 airfields. Historians debate what is an airfield because some of them were small, what was operational, what was not, and they say they disabled 18 and one was just a bit destroyed, but it was 19 airfields and 300 warplanes. Wow. Yes, in 190 minutes, they destroyed 19 airfields. The Israeli victory was such a miracle because they destroyed over 300 Egyptian aircraft. And while they did this, they only lost 19 aircraft. And they only lost 19 pilots. It's so amazing. This history is all true.
And this is in
It's
67,
true.
so this is not even that long ago.
Yes. 1967, yeah, the 6-Day War. So now, at that time, there was a man called General Ariel Sharon. Yes, so Ariel Sharon then invades the Sinai. Yes, and what do you call it? Yes, when he invades the Sinai, it's a miracle because his army, what do you call it? Israel is small, Egypt is big, and he only lost 19 battle tanks to destroy the Egyptians. Yes, wow, this is a miracle. They lost 19 pilots, 19 aircraft, and 19 tanks. So now, at the time, Major General Ariel Sharon of Israel, he invaded the Sinai, and his division had 19,000 men. Many historians dispute this, but at the US Army Combined Arms Center, many times it's been reported it's 19,000 men. But what do you call it? Yes, it was a miracle. Yes. So now, what do you call it? Yes. Now another miracle is, what do you call it? At that time, he's in the Knesset now. Moshe Dayan, the Dayan is coming. The one-eyed Dayan, the Antichrist is coming. Yes. Or Moshe Dayan, Yes, what do you call it? Yes, he's leading the army to take Jerusalem because don't forget the Arab Legion, and they say it's Arabs, but the British Legion is ruling Jerusalem. So now they go there to take it, and they capture the city. Yes, on the 7th of June, they captured the city. They captured it exactly, almost exactly 1900 years later, because they
Sure.
lost the city. Yeah, they lost the city to the Romans 1900 years
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
It's a miracle. It's exactly 1900 years. Oh, all this history is true. The ancient Romans did exist. That's why they chose the dates. Why are the ancient Romans at that time? So people don't understand. What they've used is the Kabbalah maths or Kaaba and Allah maths. This is described in my books, the balance sheets and the mathematics. Yes, it has to balance where they forged and invented the history. So now they turn around and say that when Israel took control of Jerusalem, it was a miracle. It was exactly 19 years after the Arab Legion took control of the city. And it was exactly 19 years after Israel declared independence. At last, they got hold of Jerusalem. 19 years later. Yes, that's not all. So now here is the exact details because some people don't know about Moshe Dayan or the Dadan, Dajjal, or whatever, the one-eyed Antichrist. He was what you call it, made commander of the Israeli forces in Jerusalem in 1948. He failed to take the city. So now he personally commanded the Israeli forces to capture the old city of Jerusalem because he was the Ministry of Defense in 1967. He became a superhero because 19 years before he failed to take the city, but 19 years later, he personally commanded the Israeli forces and he took Jerusalem. Yes, so that's not all. Let's just see all of this. It's just a total joke. It's just ridiculous. So now, during the 19 years between 1948 and 1967, the Jewish population of Jerusalem in areas outside the old city increased to become 19,000. That's 190,000 miraculously. Yes, exactly like that. So now, what do you call it? Yes, um, they're having the Six-Day War. The United Nations demands a ceasefire. And the ceasefire, yes, was based on the UN resolution of 19th of August 1948. That's why I told you that resolution before was important, because this ceasefire was decided upon and based upon the ceasefire of the resolution of 19th of August 1948. You see? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what do you call it? Yes. So now during the Six-Day War, it's so sad. So many people died. They say they're telling us 19,000 people died on all sides during the Six-Day War. It can't be 20. It's 19,000. If you find an extra thousand, they're going to say you're lying. It's 19,000. If you say it's 18,890, no, 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 it's 19,000. It's got to be 19. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you call it? Yes. So now
But also,
the
even
Six
here
Day
you can
War.
see just the sides that you showed there. On one side, at least it says in figures 20,000, the third one, but that's like a wiki site. Who knows who can edit there? But on Time Magazine, which of course is a top tier publication, it definitely says
And
about
Britannia,
19,000.
Britannica Encyclopedia. Yes. Don't forget, Wikimand is not printed. Britannica is printed. You can change websites. Britannica Encyclopedia is printed. Yes, that's why I put it there. I put the 20,000 there to show that they're inventing the data. It's all just a forgery. All this history is a lie. There's no evidence there was a Six-Day War. There's no evidence there was fighting. There's no evidence they blew up this Air Force. There's no evidence of anything. All of it is just a scam. There is no history of this war. And all the television videos, Israeli Air Force, yeah, in the deserts with their tanks. All of it
Oh
is
my
just
God.
the media. It's just a joke. It's just a total joke. So now they're saying we got to sort out the peace. The United States, President Johnson of the United States declared the 5 principles that could bring peace between exchanging land for peace was on the 19th of June. Yes, that was the 5 principles. Yes, that many American presidents still advertise today. That's not all. They turn around and say that the Israeli government made a secret decision on the 19th of June, the same day that, what do you call it? Yes, I think I've sent you the wrong one. On the same day that President Johnson made his declaration, yes, I sent you the wrong one. It's the next page. Yeah, it's a big secret that on the 19th of June, the Israeli government voted to return Sinai to Egypt and Golan to Syria in exchange for peace, that they've been planning it since the 19th of June 1967. Yes, so now at that time the world changes and what do you call it? And things move forward, and along comes the Russians, the Soviet Union, Sovietsky Union. Yes, and they're so scary. Yes, yes, and what do you call it? Yes, and people say the Russians were crazy, and what they were doing is they were supplying weapons to the Egyptians, and the thing is they invented new weapons and everything, and they invented the man-portable air defense system. They use these words to make it difficult. Yeah, basically the Strela missile that you could use it on your shoulder and you could shoot down aircraft. Have a look at the picture. So now the Israeli Air Force, they say it's a miracle. They only lost 19 aircraft and they wiped out 19 airfields. Yes, and so it's a miracle. So now along comes the Strela missile, and then Egypt was the first country in history, and they used the Strela missile and they shot down an Israeli aircraft near over in the Sinai on 19th of August 1969. It was history, the first time ever. Yes. So what do you call it? There's still border clashes. It's not a border. Israel had occupied the Sinai again, and now they were near Port Said, Ismailia, and Suez. They're on the Suez Canal, basically. So what do you call it? Yes, the United Nations tried to make a ceasefire to end the small clashes. What do you call it? Yes, and but they failed for many years. The war was in 1967, but they're failing. So the United States then steps in the way and said, "We will try," since the United Nations failed, and then they made the William Rogers Plan for the ceasefire on the 19th of June, 1970, which was implemented by both sides on the 7th of August, 1970. It's just a ceasefire. Yes. So what do you call it? Now, Gamal Abdel Nasser at that time, because he's getting all these Russian weapons and there's thousands of Russian soldiers, about 20,000 in Egypt that they're claiming, it doesn't make sense. Yes, helping the Egyptians prepare for war against Israel. Yes. So now President Nasser, I think it's his final trip. He goes to Moscow in July 1970. He stays there for 19 days. And they say he has medical treatment because he's not well for diabetes. Yes, and they advertise this so much, it's 19 days and everything, because they're saying we can't get peace in the Middle East without the Russians and the Soviets. Yes, so it becomes very big. So now Gamal Abdel Nasser, when he comes back from Russia, after 19 days, he comes back and having medical care, and he's the big hero of the Arab world. He's just a hero. So now, what do you call it? Yes, he came to power in July 1952. Yes, and he died in his 19th year in power. Yes, from health problems, and he was said to be the most famous Arab leader in Arab history. Yes, yeah, that he was so famous and popular throughout the Middle East, and they saw him as a hero. So why did they create these heroes at the time? Yes, I will explain to you. Because at that time the world was different to what we think today. You and me were used to identification cards, passports. We are willing to turn around and say, "I'm French, I'm German, I'm Polish, I'm German." Yes, this is what we do these days. Yes, yes,
Right.
Raphael.
Yes.
Yes, but now the thing is, at that time, yes, at that time, in many places in the world, what do you call it? When somebody turned around and said, "I am the government, you have to pay me tax, you must have a birth certificate, you cannot build your house. There's lots of land in the countryside, and the government's declared we own this land." At that time, the people didn't believe in these laws. So the thing is, what they did was they made Egypt think, hey, Israel's going to invade. You need the military. You need security. They did this in Europe in World War II. You need us protection. You need this. You have to recognize. You must join the army. You're defending your lands. That's why they created Ayatollah Khomeini. and all these dictators, General Franco and everything. But Jamal Abdel Nasser, he was so famous, so he died in his 19th year after he had medical treatment for 19 days. Yes, you get it. So now, and the thing is, things are getting so bad. So after he's died, the Russians are involved in Egypt now because Nasser made more deals with the Russians. And what they're telling us, what you call it, yes, Egypt in October 1970, Israel declared that what you call it, Egypt had these missile systems provided, missile or however you want to pronounce it, by the Russians, and they were 19 within 19 miles of the ceasefire line. Oh, sure. They won't put it at within 20 miles or 18 miles. They put it 19 miles within the ceasefire line. Yes. So, what do you call it? At that time, yes. What do you call it? Yes. A man called Anwar Sadat became the president of Egypt. Yes. You know, yes. He became the leader, and the United Nations released a warning, a press release on the 19th of April, 1971, and the warning to the world saying this is the last chance for peace in the Middle East. The last chance was on the 19th. Yes. That's what they telling us. So now, at that time, letters were sent to many Israeli politicians. Like Ben Gurion was the first prime minister, but at that time he wasn't the prime minister. But what do you call it? He had a letter from the 19th of April, and he dismissed um, 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 any peace ideas because there was stories at that time saying Anwar Sadat wanted peace, and Ben Gurion dismissed this letter regarding peace with Egypt. And he said, and Ben Gurion, he said, peace in the Middle East depended on Russia. So now what is Anwar Sadat going to do, the president of Egypt? Because there's all these, what do you call it, Russian weapons there. Anwar Sadat replies, yes, and he says on April 19th, 1972, a year later, and he says, the United States, the Americans are supplying weapons to Israel. Yes, he complains. But then they turn around and say Anwar Sadat was a bit more serious, that he really wanted peace. So what does Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, do? Yes, he decides, what do you call it, yes, to expel the Russian military advisors from Egypt on the 19th of July, 1972. So he's really trying for peace. Yes, so now he's really trying for peace. So what do you call it? Yes, so at that time peace was not achieved, and many people said Egypt is weak, it cannot attack the Israeli forces. Same like now they said Gaza is weak, it can't attack Egypt, Israeli forces. So on the 19th of April 1973, the Israeli intelligence made an assessment, and they said Egypt is weak, it can't do anything. Same like they're saying right now about Gaza. Yeah, and then Gaza mysteriously attacks, they're saying. Yes. So then what happened? Yes, Egypt mysteriously attacks the Israeli army. And they attack, and this war is known as the Yom Kippur War or the October War of 1973. Or it's known as the 19-day war because it lasted for 19 days in 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Yes, and this time 19,000 people can't die in the war. You can't use the same numbers again and again, can we, Raphael? We're scamming people. We can't say 19,000 people died this time.
Well, if
So
people
let's
don't
just,
check, we could actually, but let's see.
but yeah, that's true. They're stupid and dumb. I've got all these books. Nobody's read them. They hear a few things, they make conclusions, and then they're making their own video saying something, and then I have to show the evidence again, and then they're embarrassed. Of course, they won't apologize, and then they're going to say we are the lovers of Christ or the lovers of Islam, and their own religion say, hey, you should be kind, generous, and peaceful. Salam or shalom, but they're not like that. Yes. Well, anyway, in reality, many of these people. Anyway, according to historians, 19,000 Arabs died because of the war. Yes. So they said it that way, saying that Israel was more violent. They killed more people, 19,000 of them. Yes. And in the last war, they said that Israel killed the majority of the people. So now, at that time,
I
what
just
do you call it?
saw a pretty popular, of course, there's many videos about this now, and one video about the statistics of these things. And I was actually wondering, how accurate can they be? So here we can see that also they cannot be trusted, like statistics of
Everything is
wars
a
and so
joke
on.
and a scam. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's just a joke. You can see from the figures in the data, it's a lie. Yeah, it's just a total scam. Yes, as you could see. So now the thing is, mysteriously, yes, after the Yom Kippur War, the United Nations passes a resolution on 10th of November declaring that Zionism was racism. Yeah, and at that time, because these Arab countries became independent, yes, 72 people supported it, and the resolution was passed, and the 19 members of the Arab League supported this resolution. This resolution was later cancelled in December 1991. Yes, but why did this resolution, where did they get this resolution from? So let's see this now. Along comes a famous man. Oh, the Muslims will talk about him. Yeah, but then they don't know the rest of the history. They don't even check. A man named Yasser Arafat. Have you heard of this man?
Indeed, he had very good relations with Austria also, officially.
Yes, yeah, he did. And the thing is, this man, what do you call it? Yes, in many of his young speeches, many people don't look at them. The way he does his body movements are similar to Fidel Castro. And many of the Palestinian Liberalization Organization members had meetings with Fidel Castro. I think Fidel Castro, I forgot, actually went to Palestine, to Gaza. Yes, and the thing is, Yasser Arafat, yes, in many of his old videos, he's actually he behaves like Fidel Castro. Same acting, same body language. Yes. So the thing is, everything is not what pe- people seem to think. Let me just send a photograph of this guy, and then the thing is, they turned him into a hero. Yes, but if anybody knows what was going on amongst the Palestinians at the time, the majority of the people rejected him. He was created and he was put
So
in
it could
power.
be that the figures that apparently portray Yasser Arafat and Fidel Castro simply went to the same acting school for resistance fighter
Yes,
acting, let's say.
you're right. Do you know when I saw some of his early speeches when he was younger? I thought, oh my God, he's got the same clothes as Fidel Castro, even the same hat, and he's using the same body language. And I couldn't believe it, the same speed of talking and everything. I thought, what the hell is this? Yes. I thought, what the hell is this? So the thing is, what they did was, at the time, the Arabs and the Israelis said they'll only negotiate with the PLO. So what does he do? Just before they declared Zionism is racism, exactly a year before that, Yasser Arafat does his famous speech at the United Nations. Yes, and he says, "I have an olive branch. It's called the olive branch speech, very famous." And he turned around and says, "Zionism is racism." He said it at that speech 1 year before, and he said because they won't let the Arabs live with the Jews, and they destroyed 19,000 Palestinian houses. Don't ask me where he got his data from, but it's totally suspicious. 19,000.
Oh,
You know, all of it sounds like a hoax. It could be worse, or maybe it could be a lot less. But anyway, it just shows that it's a joke. Yes, and what do you call it? So now he does this, and Zionism was declared racism, but we got the problems that Sinai and Gaza is now occupied by the Israelis. So Anwar Sadat does something strange. The whole world was shocked. All these things are the major data. I'm not saying the small stories. These are big stories like Gaza and Israel right now. It's on the front pages of the world news television. People are thinking, whoa, this is impossible. So now Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, on the 19th of November 1977, he went to Israel. He arrived in Tel Aviv. Everyone thought this was impossible. It's an impossible thing. Yes, so that it's all just a big
well,
media
if
show.
one thing we learned, then if it's anything related to 19, anything seems possible, at least in the historical record.
Well, you're beginning to see it. And then what do you call it? Yes. So now there's many people are studying. They're studying history according to what the official history says. It says, why would Anwar Sadat go to make peace? Now use your brain. This is what happens. Bread riots start in throughout all over Egypt on January the 18th, and the main rioting day was the 19th, where people are smashing things up and everything for bread. That Egypt is poor. It's going through economic problems. Oh, really? but nobody ever checks. It's because the Egyptian government stopped giving money for bread on the 17th of
Yeah, that's
January
like
on
perfect.
purpose.
That's what they always say, 3 days, and then everyone gets hungry and goes crazy. Yeah.
No, 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 it's not about 3 days. Check this out. Yeah, I'm talking about the price. So the price of bread goes up because the Egyptian government says we're going to stop money for bread on the 17th. They knew that this will have riots. So the main riots, it started on the 18th and then the main riots were on the 19th. So then on the 20th, they said, okay, don't worry, we're going to give money for bread. Don't worry, the price won't go up. They did it on purpose to make sure that there were riots on the 19th.
Right, right. That's
Are
what I
you
meant.
beginning to see?
That's what I meant. I mean, in this case, it maybe only took a day or whatever, but yeah. Otherwise, after 3 days, people get hungry. That's what I was implying. But yeah, I see. I see. It's definitely planned. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now many people who've studied the Israeli-Arab conflict have heard of the Camp David Accords, and it's so famous. I remember when I was young, you can't forget it, that people thought, "Whoa, amazing photographs of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Begin from Israel and Jimmy Carter, and it was like a big moment in history. And they want you to worship this history. They're the geniuses, or you can call them jinns, you can call them whatever you want, and they want you to look up to them, and that's what people are doing. Many people kept this picture as a moment of peace or anything. So this is known as the Camp David Accords. Yes, where, what do you call it, the Camp David Accords, what do you call it, was when the leaders, only the three men, said we will agree to a formula for peace. Yes, and this formula was accepted and approved by the Egyptian government on the 19th of September 1979. But now we've got the Israeli side, so let's see what happens over there, because they always show it on television, what's going on in governments and this and that. So on the Israeli side, there was panic. Yes. On the Egyptian side, they said, they accepted it on the 19th of September. On the Israeli side, yes, there was panic for 10 days, another 10 days. And then the Knesset finally approved the Camp David Accords on the 28th of September. But there was panic because 19 people voted against the Camp David Accords. Yes. And those 19 people, it made a big story out of it. Are you beginning to see what it is? So now the thing is, Egypt and Israel is the first Arab Israeli peace agreement. Yes, between anywhere, or these, so-called governments. First ever peace agreement. And the peace treaty is the 26th of March, 1979. Nothing to do with 19. This treaty is remembered in Israel and in America every year on the 26th of March. But this treaty is remembered in Egypt every year on the 19th of March. Why?
Hmm.
Why are they going to remember it on the 19th? In fact, they've turned it into a national holiday of celebration. Yes. Yeah, in Israel, they just remember it in the media, things like that. In Egypt, it's a holiday and a national celebration. Okay, let's have a look at why. Yes, then you're going to think, oh my God, they're doing too much because this 19 means so much to them. It means so much that it must be something to do with focusing on 19. Yes, this is not a joke anymore. People
Hmm.
are asking what's going on in Gaza right now. If you don't understand this, you are not going to understand who, what, why, when. You won't. Yes, you can watch many videos and say, let the world wake up. Okay, we found evidence, it's an inside job. You're still not going to figure out who, what, why, when, unless if you go through who, what, why, when yourself. If you don't want to read my books, go and do it yourself. Yes? And if you've just watched a small video for 2 hours, don't turn around and say, hey, I know it all. In my books, I've put the full evidence. You don't want to read my books, go and do the research yourself. Yes? And then the thing is, if the world isn't going to wake up, they're not going to, because this information, what I've told you, even you can see this is absolutely crazy. This is not
Indeed,
normal.
indeed.
It's totally crazy that even when I think about it, it drives me insane that I even think this is impossible. Who the hell are these jinns or geniuses that are running the show? They are so clever, so advanced that you know, uh, I'm not dumb or stupid or anything. Yeah, I think I'm quite intelligent actually, but these people are so smart, so clever. This is ridiculous that they're going to say that the military border is 19 kilometers from the sea, this and that. It's just going a bit too far. Well, anyway, let's have a look at why they say Egypt remembers it on the 19th of March every year, and they have national celebrations. Doesn't make sense when the treaty was on the 26th. So let's have a look. So I thought I'll look into it. So after the peace treaty was signed, it doesn't mean that there's peace because the Israeli army is still inside Egypt in the Sinai. So then they held negotiations for Israeli soldiers to leave Sinai. These negotiations were finalized on January the 19th, 1982. You understand? Yes, Ariel Sharon. Yes, he was part of the delegation, the meetings. I'm sure many people have heard of his name. So now, so the negotiations were finalized, and then the final withdrawal of the Israeli army happened. Yes, it happened on the 19th of March, 1989. By that time, Egypt had a new president called Hosni Mubarak. Yes, and the thing is, and there was a dispute of the town called Taba. It's a beautiful coastal resort on the border with Israel and Egypt in the Sinai. And this was the main problem. So the Israelis withdrew, and then the Egyptians put their flag up on the 19th of March, 1989. So that's why 19th of March has become the day to remember the final peace between Israel and Egypt, because that day peace happened because Israel was gone. The Israeli army was gone. You see? 19th of March. Oh, they
Hmm.
chose the 19th of March. Oh, no. Yes. Some people are still going to be skeptic and say, maybe it's an accident.